Hey guys, Jacob Wheeler here. It's the fall time of the year, starting to cool off. We're getting a couple of those cold fronts, and something about those cool fronts in the fall triggers these bass into biting. But one thing that's always so frustrating to me is getting them to bite because they're so keyed in on certain size bait. So when I'm cranking in the fall, I always have two rods on my deck with two different kinds of crankbaits. And this is how I categorize them. You know, this DT6 right here is my workhorse. This is gonna be perfect when I'm cranking in between docks, cranking around docks, cranking on the outside of pieces of wood. It's gonna get a little bit deeper. I'm gonna throw this on a little bit lighter line, 12-pound line. And then I have my four-wheeler. This is a little Rashi Square 3, it's a square bill, very buoyant, so it's gonna be able to get into that tightest little places. It's gonna be able to deflect off the pieces of wood in the thickest of cover and pull those fish out. Now I'm gonna put this on a little bit heavier line. So remember, 12-pound line, and then I'll probably put this actually on 17 to 20-pound fluorocarbon. So I'm gonna be able to really crank that thing in there and have a lot of horsepower. When I get that fish to bite me, I'm gonna be able to get him out of there. And one of the best ways to catch these fish is cranking. And not only just cranking, but cranking cover and cranking wood. This is the perfect time of year to go into those areas, those lay down areas on those channel banks or on those flats, and cranking around those places and covering water, but also making precise cast. Because when you're making precise cast on a piece of cover, those fish are setting up there. A lot of times they're not actually down on the bottom in the fall. They're normally suspended up on the tops of those trees or up on top of a limb. And this is something that's really important, is understanding how to walk and crawl your crankbaits through cover and getting those fish to bite. So I'm gonna show you guys here what I'm talking about. We have a dock right here, and we have a horizontal tree that's laid up against it. Something about that horizontal cover, a lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of times is the key where those fish can set up, they can suspend in it. You know, sometimes it gives them a lot more cover. You know, thinking about it, bass suspending in a treetop that's maybe sitting over 20 foot of water, you know, they're gonna have a lot more protection and be able to hide from their forage in a horizontal piece of cover over just a pole on a dock. And so that's what I think about. You know, I'm thinking, okay, hey, where is he gonna wanna hide? It's not necessarily always about you know, how deep it is on these flats. Sometimes it's a channel bank, sometimes it can be out there in 20 foot of water where a tree sets up and extends out in 20 foot of water. It's all about understanding where these bass are gonna set up and where they're going to ambush their prey. Where is the best place for them to set up and get a good chance to get a bite? Now, the first thing that I do when I set up on a promising looking piece of cover is I take my time and analyze where I would think that fish is gonna set up at. My first cast is actually gonna be out away from it. So I'm gonna cast out here on the edge so I can maybe crawl that crankbait. So there's a little limb right there. So I just found out that goes a lot further than I expected it to. Right off the edge, I'm gonna cast out there. I can also see a little bit of something right here. I'm gonna make a few casts out on the edge just to make sure that I'm not messing something up, because a lot of times you're gonna catch an extra fish that you wouldn't if you pay attention to a lot of the outside cover. So I'll start out there, and then obviously the juice is towards the trunk. When I look at a tree, I look at it, okay, you know, a lot of times the bass wanna be connected somewhere close to that tree. You know, towards the end on this tree, towards that other dock, is where I feel like it's the gnarliest, nastiest cover. So that's gonna be probably the highest percentage. But while I'm at this angle, I'm gonna cast down the trunk. You know, and I'm gonna really try to work that crankbait slowly down through there, trying to feel every little branch, trying to feel every little piece of wood. There was a little piece of wood right there. I stopped the crankbait. And one thing what you do is when you're cranking a crankbait, you know, a square bill, a DT6, whatever it might be, you crank that crankbait down there and you feel, you're trying to feel. You're not necessarily, you know, cranking it real fast and burning the crankbait through cover. You're really trying to, at this point in time, to try to feel and almost worm the crankbait through the other pieces of cover. And that's what people don't understand, is crankbaits can be used to fish slowly as well. You know, it's a great bait to deflect off a cover, but also taking my time. You'll see with this bait right here, it's not very buoyant. So I'm not gonna use it maybe not up inside the trees, but on the outside, that DT6 is really good to crank around and be able to feel that piece of cover. And once I feel that piece of cover coming pretty closely, I'll slow it down. It'll pop up over there, give it a couple pops, and continue to remove. All right, guys, that's the ins and outs of fall time cranking. Next time you're on the water, make sure to remember, have two rods set up. You have your workhorse and you have your four-wheeler. Runs a little bit shallower, your workhorse is gonna run a little bit deeper. And pay attention to your line size, because obviously your line size is gonna determine how deep that bait's running. And depending on how deep those fish are, it's really gonna make a difference. So hopefully these tips help you out next time you're on the water.